Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. So anyway, let's talk about the Gothic genre. The Gothic came into existence in the mid-18th century during the Enlightenment period. The Enlightenment period was a time where science and reason were resoundingly praised and rapidly evolving. Churches, graveyard, monsters, and psychological disturbances are all common conventions of the Gothic genre. Today, I'll be using Fred Bonning's Introduction to Negative Aesthetics to analyse Bram Stoker's novel Dracula and Anna Lily Amirpour's film A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. So, Bonning believes that negative aesthetics are central to the Gothic narrative. Gothics are intended to evoke feelings of distress and disturbance, battering the audience into submission to the dark and the macabre. However, in order to showcase the negative, the Gothic needs the positive. Dark and light, good and evil, moral and immoral. The juxtaposition of the two gives the Gothic its path to redemption. Redemption takes form based on the cultural and historical placement of the text. In the 19th century, when the Gothic rose to prominence, England was in its Victorian era. Fixed ideas of morality were deeply entrenched into Victorian society. This is especially true in the context of gender and sexuality. Morality is also heavily tied to religious ideals of Christianity at the time. Darkness in the Gothic is often represented by the supernatural and psychological disturbances. Logic and order are disrupted by strong emotion and evil outwards forces. The uncanny, a theory popularized by Freud, causes breakdown when the familiar is plagued by unconscious fears. The fears are materialized in the form of the monster of the story. Vampires, werewolves, ghosts, and more. The monsters become the other, and the other is what must be defeated. Bram Stoker's Dracula was set in the early 1890s and published in 1897. This was towards the end of the Victorian period, and the text was set primarily in England. The beginning of the book centers on Jonathan Harker's journey to Romania to meet the Count Dracula, surprisingly enough. Once Harker reaches Eastern Europe, the people here are treated as superstitious upon learning of his destination. A woman gives him a crucifix to wear for his mother's sake. Harker, as a man of reason, is confused and doubtful to the effect of this gesture. The meaning in the story here is twofold. First, what we can infer is that Catholicism is treated as a proxy for irrationality, and from this we also gather that the people here are deemed less intelligent. So the people here are othered, and they are treated as backwards. Once arriving at Dracula's castle, Harker's stay with Dracula is extremely intimate. The majority of his stay in the castle is alone with Dracula. You hear Dracula argue with his three wives, the vampires, when they attempt to drain Harker's blood, saying, "This man belongs to me." Dracula looks at Harker lovingly, is attentive to his needs, and desires quality time with him throughout his day. Without context, Dracula's treatment of Harker is loving. However, Harker is trapped in this relationship. Harker becomes Dracula's damsel in distress. He is feminized by Dracula, treated as a woman, and treated as a plaything that can be disposed when needed, but also he has a propensity to protect. This darkness in sexuality is also displayed in the presentation of the female characters in Dracula. Lucy is pursued by three men and asks why can't she marry all three. Lucy then becomes hypnotized by Dracula and eventually is turned into a vampire herself. Her transformation into monster becomes a punishment for her transgressions as a woman, and especially as a woman of the time. In order for morality to prevail, the evil of promiscuity must be conquered. Vampire Lucy must then be staked to death by the very men she loved. These men must choose the path of righteousness over love, of which is now corrupted. And moving on to our next example, the film A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night was released in 2014 and is set in the fictional Bad City in Iran. The antagonist, the girl, is a young female vampire who primarily feeds from bad men. The girl works to protect those impacted by patriarchal violence, a sex worker, a young boy, and a man with a drug-addled father. Here, we no longer have clear conceptions of light and dark. The girl, while the monster, is also admirable. She feeds to protect rather than out of greed or lust, and instead prohibits the lustful men from feeding from their prey, the vulnerable. In some ways, the men of the town are more like the vampires of the Gothic, exploiting those around them with sexual and physical violence. The girl subverts expectations of women in the Gothic and in the cultural setting of Iran in 2014. The girl is not a damsel in distress, nor is she the heroine, nor is she the perfect housewife, both hypervisible and invisible at the same time. She is powerful. While justice motivated, she has allocated herself judge, jury, and executioner. In some ways, she's more human than the people of the story. She finds her redemption, as does the story, when she leaves the town, suggesting that the return to reason here is found in leaving the bad behind. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.